Hello again, everybody, and I'm here to bring you the second Game of Thrones review, and my second review ever, and I'm going to try to make this one a little more succinct, and before I had some issues with having to do the audio and the video separately, so it didn't quite match up. I'm going to try to make it match a little better this time. I actually wanted to get this out a few days ago, but I had to wait until there was a time when there wasn't anybody else in the house, and I wouldn't have to worry about them knocking on the door and interrupting and all of that fun stuff. That's why I said in my intro, it's going to be really hard for me to get a lot of videos out because I can basically only do it when I'm the only one here, which is a rare and precious occasion. So there's a few things I left out of the first review. I'm going to try to do a little bit of a better job for you this time, but we'll see, because it's all, I'm improvising it as I go. And also there's going to be, it's going to be a lot like the first review in it sort of being a retelling of the episode with my thoughts added in, as well as some background information that you don't necessarily get from the show, but is pretty important to the plot line. And the reason I do it that way is because I don't want to give things away in case by chance you are watching the show for the first time and you don't always know what's going to happen. So I don't want to ruin that for anybody, so I try to keep spoilers out. I mean, I will mention if something's important or hint at, and I might say, oh, we learn more about this at a later point in time. And like I said, I will tell some of the past things that led up to this particular occasion. But I don't want to spoil anything, just in case it is your first time seeing the show, which I'm sure is possible. But anyway, just to get into it now, it's the second episode of Season 1, Episode 102. It is called The Kingsroad, or road trip, Game of Thrones style. There's a lot of traveling going on in this episode. There is a lot of people going in different directions and setting off the theme of what's going to be happening in episodes and seasons to come. As you can see, we start out, the picture I'm showing in the background is one of the first shots of the show, and that is the Dothraki horde, which is Daenerys' new people, her husband's people, Khal Drogo. And Khal is actually his title, Drogo is his name. Khal is a title which is the Dothraki word for king, and you'll see a lot of people refer to Daenerys as Khaleesi, which is the female version. In other words, Khal is king and Khaleesi is queen. And in this little part here, Jorah's telling her, he's trying to make her feel more comfortable because he can see that she's having a rough time with the transition from, you know, living under the care of the rich nobleman Illyrio Mopatis and her evil brother Viserys. Jorah can see that she's having trouble dealing with the changes, and he's trying to make her feel comfortable and tells her he's trying to get her to eat, and all they really have is horse meat and grass, and he says, well, you can't live on grass. And then he tells the story about how the Dothraki believe the world will end and all of that. He's just trying to make her feel more comfortable, trying to be friends with her so she doesn't feel quite so alone, since the only other person she can talk to in her own language is her brother. And her brother, let's put it frankly, he's abusive, and you see a lot more of that in the book. I'm not a book person, but I have read the first 1.5 books. But anyway, in this part, Jorah is trying to get Viserys to go away and say, oh, you'll be more comfortable somewhere else. But Viserys doesn't really trust that Khal Drogo will give him the army unless he's right there reminding him every step of the way. And we also get a little insight into why Jorah is there, and it turns out that Ned Stark wanted to execute Jorah for selling slaves And so Jorah is obviously from the north, and as we said in the last episode, Ned is responsible for enforcing the laws in the north, so that's why Jorah is exiled to Essos to escape beheading at the hands of Ned Stark. And there's more to the story about why Jorah did that, but we'll get into that in later episodes. Now we move on to the scene where Tyrion wakes up and he's hungover, and it's their last day in Winterfell before they go back to King's Landing and Ned starts his new job. And this is right after Bran had been pushed from the window of the tower. And yes, Bran is alive. He didn't die, but he is in a coma. He hasn't woken up. They don't know if he will wake up. And Tyrion is telling Joffrey, the prince, the heir to the throne, you have to go and tell the Starks how, give your condolences, so to speak. And he's like, I don't care. That boy means nothing to me. And what good are my condolences going to do them? And Tyrion's putting him in his place, and we see our first 1, 2, 3 Joffrey slaps, which everybody comes to love, I'm sure, as you'll get to know Joffrey more and what kind of a little jerk he is. And we also see our first introduction to the Hound. They showed him in the first episode, but didn't really talk to him. That is Sandor Clegane, also known as the Hound. He is like Joffrey's bodyguard, basically. And I'm saying, oh, he won't forget that, meaning Tyrion slapping him. And Tyrion's like, good, I hope he doesn't. Because Tyrion's really the only one in his family who's trying to tell him how to behave. Speaking of his family, we also get this scene, breakfast with the Lannisters. We see more of Cersei's 2 younger children, Myrcella and Tommen. Yes, that's Myrcella and Tommen. And you can see that Jaime and Cersei are concerned, but not, they're concerned about Bran's fate. Not that, they feel bad, but they're more concerned about, is he going to live? Is he going to wake up? Is he going to remember what exactly happened here? And as you can see, the younger children, Myrcella and Tommen, they are really not anything like Joffrey. Looks-wise, yeah, but they seem to be sweet, decent children, unlike Joffrey, who's just a little terror. But this is where Tyrion says that, well, he's not dead. We're just waiting for him to wake up, and Tyrion says, I can't wait myself because I'd be curious to see what he has to say. And Tyrion is actually, you get the impression that he thinks that his brother and sister know something about this. He doesn't come out and say it, but he implies that he has his suspicions that they might have had something to do with Bran's fall from the tower. And a little later in the scene, Jaime, who's really the only one in the family that gets along with Tyrion, other than the little kids, Jaime's like, you make me worry about what side you're on sometimes, and Tyrion says, oh, you know how much I love my family, and of course he's being sarcastic, because him and his family do not get along at all. And so you get the feeling that Tyrion knows that there's something going on with Jaime and Cersei, and that it could very well have to do with Bran and what happened to him. Let's see, that's pretty much all there is to say about this scene, although I don't know if I mentioned it before, but Jaime's also known as the Kingslayer. It's his nickname, and they mentioned that in the first episode, and we get a little more of that story later on. But moving on from the Lannisters, we go to Catelyn at Bran's side. Bran's in bed. He's basically in a coma, more or less. And we see in this, as the scene goes on, Cersei comes in to give her condolences, like Tyrion told Joffrey to do. And she tells the story about how she lost her first baby, a little black-haired beauty, she calls him, and how she never went to see him and basically acted like he never existed because it was the only way she could deal with the grief. And the question, of course, is Cersei telling the truth? Knowing what we know about Cersei, and also knowing that Cersei told a different version of the story in the book in a later scene that implies that she actually deliberately made herself lose the child. But they never mention that in the show. So we're left to wonder, is Cersei being honest here? Does she actually care? And it's really doubtful knowing what we know about Cersei at this point. She also mentions a little thing here about, I pray to the seven, and that's actually the second mention of religion we get. The seven is the widely accepted religion in Westeros, and that's Catelyn's religion, and that's part of the prayer wheel that you saw Catelyn saying. That's what it's called, a prayer wheel. It's supposed to be like it's some religious symbol that's supposed to, you know, appeal to the gods to answer your prayers. And we'll hear a lot more about the seven later episodes, but that's the thing. Ned is the old ways, and Catelyn is the new ways. So they have two different religions, and their children seem to say they worship the old gods and the new at some point. So they actually, the Starks, follow both religions to some extent, Catelyn's as well as Ned's. And there's, like I said, there will be more about the religions later. The next scene we've got is Jon meeting Jaime. Jon is having the smith make a sword, and he runs into Jaime, and Jaime's almost taunting him, asking him, has he ever killed a man, and talks about how much he enjoys killing. As I said, his nickname is the Kingslayer because of what he did to the previous king. And Jaime continues to taunt him somewhat, you know, trying to come off like he's being friendly, but he's being a smartass, basically, and saying, oh, the great men of the Night Watch protecting us from all these evil things that lurk in the night. And he's being very sarcastic and condescending, and talking down, like, in other words, he doesn't believe the Night's Watch are great men, and he doesn't believe that there's anything lurking in the dark that they protect the realm from. So just a little more Lannister Stark hate. And now we start many of the scenes in this episode about Jon leaving and saying goodbye to most of his family. The first scene we get is Jon and Arya, and this goes back to the sword he was having made. The sword is called Needle, which Arya names it Needle. And you see a very strong bond, it seems, between Jon and Arya, even though Jon is not a legitimate child. And her wolf, which we hear, is named Nymeria, and that name is actually after a warrior queen of years past that settled the southernmost kingdom in the Seven Kingdoms, Dorne, and her name was Nymeria, and she's a warrior queen, which explains a lot of why Arya would have picked that name, because Arya would like to be the warrior queen if she could be, because she's definitely more of a tomboy than Sansa will ever be. And she's into the whole fighting and sword play and all that, and Jon seems to know this about her, and he wants to make sure that she has that ability open to her before he leaves forever, basically, is because the Night's Watch vows for life, and he's basically not going to be in the family any longer, and he wants Arya to have one of the things she always wanted that the rest of her family never really gave into, because, you know, girls don't do that, girls don't play with swords. But Jon knows how much it means to Arya and gives her the sword, and she names it Needle, and you see them hug, and you can see a real love between them, even though Jon is the bastard child, so to speak, and not really a true part of the family. Let me see, what else? Okay, the next scene we're going to get to, the screen caps are still on the Jon and Arya goodbye, because there's a lot of great little scenes and interactions between them. So there's a few caps covering that scene. But the next scene is another one of Jon's goodbyes. And Jon goes to say goodbye to Bran. And Bran is in a coma, and Catelyn's at his bedside. And when Jon goes up to bid farewell to Bran before he leaves for the Wall, he takes the black. We hear that term for the first time in this episode, I believe. When you go and join the Night's Watch, it's called taking the black. So he's about to leave for the Wall, and he wants to say goodbye to his family. And you can see Jon really does seem to care about his siblings. Like he's one of the true-born children. But then we get this scene, which reminds us that he's not. we see the interaction between him and Catelyn. And Catelyn really does not want anything to do with Jon. She hates the thought of him being there and doesn't want him around and just wants him gone, which is probably a big reason why he does decide to go to the Wall, because of Catelyn's feelings towards him. And she assumes that he is the product of Ned having an affair and cheating on her, so obviously she's taking that out on Jon, even though, besides the facts of the matter and how that came to pass, it wouldn't be Jon's fault, and she still acts as though, you know, Jon is the bad guy here, even though he was an innocent baby when this alleged affair happened. There's also, I don't usually do book comparisons, but this one bugged me a little bit, because in the book, well, in the show, she says, "I want you to leave," and that's how Jon leaves the room, as Ned's coming in, and Catelyn's like, "I want you to leave." And in the book, she, like I said, I'm not going to do a bunch of book comparisons, because I'm not really a book reader. I don't read ahead. But there's some little things I'm just like, why did they leave that out? I wonder. There's a line in the book, actually, here, where Catelyn tells Jon in this scene, when he's coming to say goodbye to his comatose brother, she says, "You should be the one lying there, not Bran." Yeah. That's Catelyn. That's the way she is with Jon. She basically tells him he should be the one that's dying, instead of Bran, who isn't, supposedly not dying at this point, but still, she's very cold, very cold. And I'm not sure why they took that out. I mean, they try to play up that Catelyn is such a good mother, but the way she treats Jon is reprehensible, to put it mildly. But that's just my opinion. I'm sure other people have their opinions. But then Ned comes in as Jon leaves, and she mentions, 17 years ago, you left and came back with another woman's baby, and I can't do it again. I can't do it, Ned. She's crying and doesn't want Ned to leave, and it's, well, obviously it's a bad time for him to leave, considering Bran is unconscious and they don't know when and if he's going to wake up. But, you know, she brings it back to the whole, you left me and you cheated on me, what's going to happen this time? And that's the way she puts it. I mean, she doesn't say those exact words, but you get that's what she's hinting at. But Ned leaves because he's all about honor and duty, and that's Ned. He has to go and do what his king needs him to do. And then we get another of Jon's goodbyes to the oldest Stark boy, Robb, and they seem to get along really well, too. So Jon seems to get along with everybody in the family. I mean, they don't show him with, except Catelyn. They don't show him with Rickon, the little baby, the 6-year-old. Well, he's not a baby, but he's 6. And we don't get to see with him and Ned until later. But there's no scene at all with him and Sansa. Which leads me to believe there's no relationship at all between him and Sansa. And dare I say, Sansa is her mother's daughter. Even in the books, the other ones call him their brother, and Sansa's always saying half-brother, you know, emphasizing that he's not a real part of the family. But anyway, so there's no goodbye between him and Sansa, almost like there's no relationship between him and Sansa. But, I mean, that's just what I got from it. Then we actually see the actual Kingsroad, named the episode, and the point on the road where they are going to go their separate ways. Jon's going towards the Wall, and Ned is going with the Baratheon, the Baratheon party, the King's party, to King's Landing. And this scene right here, where Ned says goodbye to Jon, and he says, "You're Stark, you might not have my name, but you have my blood." Because Jon is asking about his mother, and is she alive, and does she even know about him, and he wants to know. But for some reason, Ned has never told anyone, including Jon, about the truth of his birth. And this scene, the way Ned picks his words are so careful about, "You're not a Stark, but you have my blood." It leads to a big debate about what is the story behind Jon coming into the world. And that's a big, long story that I might go into later, but not during this, because I just want to point it out to you that this scene is one of the 2 scenes in this episode that are highly responsible for a lot of the theories about who Jon actually is in relation to the Starks. And this is the other scene. This one right here. This is the other scene that leads to a lot of the debate. And that is Ned and Robert along the journey having a meal, and Robert's reminiscing about all the women he slept with. And Robert's a slut. We get that pretty quick here. He sleeps with a lot of women, and he tries to turn the conversation around to asking Ned about Jon's mother, and Ned just goes cold, ice cold, gets all tight-lipped, does not want to talk about Jon's mother at all. He just shuts him down. He does not want to go into that story. So that's another strange little quirk about Jon's history that leads to a lot of the theories there are out there. But this scene also works their way into finding out that Daenerys Targaryen has gotten married. And as I mentioned in the last one, Robert really, really, really hates the Targaryens. And I talked about what led to that whole hatred he has for them. And Robert's saying, oh, she's going to spread her legs and breed, and then her brother's going to come attack us, and we have to kill them. And again, Ned is ice cold. He does not want to hear this. He does not want to have anything to do with any kind of murder of any Targaryens. He does not enjoy this conversation. And it makes you wonder, if Rhaegar Targaryen had actually kidnapped Lyanna and raped her, as Robert believes, why doesn't Ned hate the Targaryens as much as Robert? Why doesn't he want to kill them as much as Robert does? Interesting. But anyway, so anyhow, you see the one really point of contention between these 2 best friends. Robert hates the Targaryens, and Ned doesn't want to hear any of it. Interesting. But also, we get the famous line where Robert says, a war's coming. I don't know where from or when, but it's coming. Foreshadowing much. Because the whole story is going to be a big part about war. Now, let's see. We move back to the Dothraki people. Another rough love scene, so to speak, between Khal Drogo and Daenerys. And the interesting thing about this scene is, obviously, she's still very unhappy in her current circumstances and not enjoying her new married life. But then she looks at her dragon eggs, those dragon eggs she got for her wedding, and all of a sudden she just smiles, like she's seeing something there. And that's an interesting thing to keep in mind. And now we go back to our road trip with Jon and Tyrion, their campfire chat, where Jon realizes that the other men in the Night's Watch are criminals, basically. They're just criminals. They have nowhere else to go, nobody wants them, so they get sent to the wall. And apparently Jon had never known this. He has always thought of the Night's Watch as the stories he's heard of days of old, where they were this elite force that protected the kingdom. And it turns out that's not really true. So Jaime was kind of right. The Night's Watch are nothing but criminals and outcasts. And Jon's not very happy about that. Because he thought he was doing something good, not just joining a group of criminals. And we also have the Jon asking Tyrion, why do you read so much? And points out his theory about Jaime has his sword, I have my mind, I need to keep my mind sharp, just like Jaime has to keep his sword sharp. And this is how I'm going to myself and my family, by being as smart as I possibly can. And we get another mention of him calling him a bastard, and Jon not liking that, and Tyrion trying to get it through to him, being a bastard isn't the worst thing in the world, so get over it, that's just, do something with it. Make something of yourself, despite what other people are trying to make you into, I think is the theme here. Now we go back to Catelyn making her prayer wheel for the 7 gods that she worships and trying to, pray for Bran's recovery. And Maester Lewin comes in. He's like the doctor, for lack of a better term. He's like the doctor at Winterfell, and he runs a lot of the day-to-day things. But Catelyn has to, overlook these things now that Ned and most of their household are off to King's Landing, including Arya and Sansa, the 2 girls. And Catelyn's been by Bran's side by 3 weeks. She won't leave the room. Robb's trying to get her back on her feet and say, your 6-year-old son, Rickon, needs you. You can't just stay in here forever. And she's not wanting to hear any of that. She just wants to stay by Bran's side. And then there's a fire outside that Robb sees, and he runs to go attend to that. And Catelyn goes to the window to see the fire and close the windows back up. And when she turns around, there's another man behind her. This shady guy who has a hood over his face pretty much. And he says, you're not supposed to be here. Nobody's supposed to be here. And it turns out this guy has a Valyrian steel dagger. Valyrian steel is a big deal. They can't make it anymore. It's the strongest steel in the land. It's alleged to have magical properties almost weaved into the metal, and it's a big deal. Only rich noble houses even have any of the remaining Valyrian steel. But he's got this Valyrian steel dagger, and he's trying to kill Bran, this little 10-year-old boy who's in a coma. He's sneaking into his room and trying to kill this little boy. And it turns out Catelyn tries to fight him off, doesn't have too much luck, cuts her hands all to hell and back. And then Summer, Bran's dire wolf, comes to the rescue and literally rips out this guy's throat and saves Bran. And then Summer just gets on the bed next to Bran, blood all over his face, just lays down next to Bran, goes back to what he was doing, guarding Bran. So you can see there's a bit of a connection between Bran and his wolf Summer. They're going to definitely go more into that later. And that also brings me to another point about the very last scene of the first episode, when Bran is falling from the tower. The camera shot almost looks like it's like Bran falling backwards towards the camera. You're almost like you're getting the point of view of the wolf, like you're watching what's happening through the wolf's eyes. Interesting. As I said, we'll get more into the Bran-Wolf connection in later days. Now we go back to the Khaleesi, Daenerys, and her hands are all cut up from their endless riding, and she's talking to her handmaidens. Her handmaidens are Doria, Irri, and Jaquie. They're talking about dragons. And Jaquie and Irri are like, oh, dragons don't exist. Everybody knows that. And then Doria says, oh, I heard these stories about dragons that, they really did exist. And Dany perks up at this. She's like, I want to hear what this girl has to say. And she sends the other 2 away. And she talks to Doria about all these stories she heard about dragons from her days as a prostitute, basically. Doria is an ex-prostitute, and she heard these stories from all the men she had been with. And Dany seems very interested in the story. And then when she finds out that Doria used to be a prostitute, she's like, huh, you made men happy? That's what your job was? Can you teach me to do that? Because obviously her marriage is very happy. Her and Khal Drogo barely even can speak to each other. She is learning some Dothraki at this point, but it's a slow process. And she wants Doria to teach her how to make men happy so she can make her husband happy and maybe make her life a little bit easier. And Doria said, yeah, I can teach you. And so that will lead to interesting things, I'm sure. So Dany bonding with Doria over hopefully trying to improve her own circumstances that she's been thrown into. And next, we get the men arriving at the wall. It's a really short, quick scene, but we get Benjen and Tyrion and Jon and the rest of the Night's Watch recruits arriving at the wall, and we get our first real view of how massive this wall is. Obviously, they are trying to keep something out. Something they really, really don't want to get to the rest of the kingdoms, because you get, it's about to go to the next little flash where you actually really get to see the wall for the first time, and it's there it is. Okay, so it's big. Alright, and like I said, it's a very quick scene, just our first view of the wall, really. And then we go back to Detective Catelyn. She is, because of this other attempt on Bran's life, it really gets her thinking, why is there someone out there that wants my 10-year-old son dead so badly? So she starts trying to find out what really happened in that tower. And she goes up to the tower and she looks around, and she ends up finding a long blonde hair in the tower. She holds it up and you can see the wheels spinning. A long blonde hair. And her mind automatically goes to the Lannisters had something to do with this. So, that sets her off on her next little course, where she takes her oldest son Robb, thus Stark's ward Theon Greyjoy, Maester Luwin, and Roderick Cassel, who's the Master at Arms, sort of like the general who's right under Ned in line of command, so to speak. He's the one that teaches the boys how to fight and all that. That's Roderick. So she takes them out and says that she thinks the Lannisters had something to do with Bran's fall and the attempt on his life. And Roderick actually backs this up a little bit by pointing out that a common assassin, somebody who's just a hitman for hire, wouldn't have access to the kind of weapon that was used in the attack on Bran. And there's somebody wealthy that had to have been pulling the strings. And we all know that the Lannisters are the wealthiest people in the Seven Kingdoms, and the long blonde hair she found, it's really looking like the Lannisters are the culprits here. And we know that they are the ones who knocked Bran out of the tower, so we know that at least they're responsible for that, if not the assassin. And she has to go tell Ned this, and Robb says that he'd go, but Catelyn says there must always be a Stark in Winterfell. So Catelyn decides to go herself, and Roderick wants to send a bunch of people with her, but she says she doesn't want to draw attention. So it's just gonna, sorry, my throat's itchy. She says that it's just going to be her and Roderick that go to King's Landing to tell Ned about all this stuff that's been going on. So that sets Catelyn off on her trip. So Ned left with Arya and Sansa, Jon left with Benjen and Tyrion, and now Catelyn and Roderick are leaving too. So they're just getting all scattered to the winds here. So basically the only ones left behind are going to be Robb, Theon, unconscious Bran, and Rickon, and their wolves. So, let's see. This is where Catelyn goes and says goodbye to Bran, and after this we get to Dany's sex lesson, I guess, where Doria's trying to teach her how to please a man, so to speak. And Doria tells her, you know, love comes in at the eyes, and she needs to look in Khal Drogo's eyes and make him love her. And Dany's like, I don't think this is the Dothraki way. And Doria says, well, if he wanted a Dothraki, why'd he marry you? And she tells her a little story about this woman who could get a man to do anything she wanted just by, you know, being a good lover, so to speak. So, that's the Dany and Doria little lesson here. And Dany seems wary, but she's willing to try it because right now her life pretty much sucks, and she's willing to do anything she can to, you know, try to improve things any way she can. So we get that. And then let's see, we move on to she's always looking at those dragon eggs, something there. We move on to Dany trying to put her lessons into play when Khal Drogo comes back to the tent. And she has learned enough Dothraki to tell him, I want to look in your face tonight. And he looks at her like, that's strange. But he gives into it. And Dany gets on top and they have their love scene. And for the first time, it actually seems like a love scene and not just sex. Or even rape, as almost the first one was. And you can see that these two are beginning to understand each other a little better, so to speak, because Dany's taking a little bit more control over her life and her marriage and making it a lot more palatable to both of them, really. So Dany's learning. She's learning quick. And we'll have to see where that goes. Our next scene is back along our road trip. At this point in time, the King's party and the Starks, Ned and his daughters, are at the inn at the crossroads, which doesn't seem like it means a lot now. But as the series progresses, there's going to be a lot of people that pass through this inn in many different occasions and scenarios and times. And it's kind of like almost like the central point of Westeros. I don't know if that's exactly geographically, but it seems like that, the way everybody always ends up there sooner or later. Anyway, Sansa is walking her wolf lady, and she runs into Ilyn Payne, who is the royal executioner, and she's all scared, and he won't talk to her, and she doesn't know why. And then she backs up and runs into the Hound, and the Hound's face is all burned on the one side. So she's like got the executioner on one side, and the Hound on the other side. So she's all acting like a scared little lamb or whatever. But she's saved by her lovely Prince Joffrey. Yes, you can hear my sarcasm, can't you? Joffrey comes in and, you know, talks about how well, actually, the Hound tells her that the Mad King cut out Ilyn Payne's tongue, and that's why he doesn't talk. And Joffrey comes, he's like, do they scare you? Leave my lady alone. Go away, Hound. Go away, Ilyn. Blah, blah, blah. You know, little pouncy, poncy, prancy Joffrey. But anyway, so he comes to her rescue. And she leaves Lady behind, and Lady's all good and well-behaved. Kind of like Sansa. Yeah, their wolves are very similar to their owners. Interesting. Like I said, wolf connection to Starks, but even with Lady and Sansa are very much like. Nymeria and Arya are very much alike. So anyway, Joffrey asks her to go on a walk with him, a little romantic walk. The little teenage lovers, whatever. Yeah, right. As you can see, I'm not a fan of Joffrey. I don't know how anybody could be. I'm not even really a fan of Sansa. She's a little hard to stomach too. But anyway, so they're walking along, and we've cut to Arya and Micah. Micah is the butcher's boy. He's friends with Arya, and they're practicing sword fighting by the river. And, of course, Sansa and Joffrey come along, and fun ensues. Joffrey wants to, you know, prove he's some kind of badass for Sansa, and he's like, what are you doing hitting my lady's sister? And makes fun of Micah for wanting to be a knight because he's lowborn, and of course makes fun of Arya and gets into it with them, and he actually gets to the point where he is holding his real sword. I mean, Arya and Micah got wooden swords. He's holding his real sword against Micah's face, and cuts his cheek and makes fun of him and tells him, you know, you're just a butcher boy and I'm your prince, and it's Joffrey's being a jerk, which we're going to see a lot of. And all in all, it basically comes down to a confrontation, and Nymeria comes to the rescue because she thinks Arya is in danger, and she leaps at Joffrey and bites his arm and knocks him down. He starts crying like a little itty-bitty baby in front of Sansa. Yeah. So, and then Arya's just looking at him like, you're the prince? Really? Really? And she's not happy with the situation, and she takes Joffrey's sword and throws it in the river. I think his sword's name was Golden Tooth, Lion's Tooth, something like that. But obviously he lost his sword pretty quick, so it doesn't really matter. Anyway, and then Arya and her wolf Nymeria run away because Sansa's all fawning over Joffrey and saying, "Oh, look what they did to my prince, and I'll go get somebody." And Joffrey's all like, "Don't touch me," and just being a jerk. And so Arya runs away with Nymeria, and Sansa's tending to pouty Joffrey and tries to go and get him help. And I guess I've got an itchy throat, so sorry about this. But anyway, that leads to the search for Arya. And you see them starting to search during the day, and then it goes into night. Basically, after she ran away with Nymeria, she kept running, apparently. In the show, it seems like they find her that night. Time is kind of an iffy thing on the show. Time frames and time periods and how much time has passed. But in the book, Arya was actually gone for 4 days, I think it was, that she was on the run with Nymeria. And when the search party is getting close to finding Arya and Nymeria, Arya is smart. She knows that Nymeria is going to be in trouble for biting Prince Joffrey. So she tries to get Nymeria to go away, and Nymeria won't go. She doesn't want to leave her side. And eventually Arya ends up having to throw a stone to make Nymeria run away. And Arya's lost her wolf. And then she gets found by the Lannisters. But luckily Nymeria did get away. The Lannisters bring her back, parade her in front of the king and the queen and Joffrey. And Joffrey told them this big long story about how Arya and the butcher's boy attacked him and beat him and sicked the wolf on him and all this loads and loads of BS that Joffrey's so good at telling to make himself look better when... And even Robert points out, "You let that little girl disarm you?" Yeah, seriously. Even Robert knows Joffrey's such a... Yeah, it's Joffrey. But anyway, so they're trying to get to the bottom of what's happening. Cersei's all bloodlusty, as is Joffrey, and they want Arya and the wolf to pay, and the guards say we can't find the wolf, and Ned comes in and he's all ticked that they brought Arya to them instead of him, and he's like, "Well, what do you want me to do here?" And Robert's like, "Discipline your daughter, and I'll take care of mine." And at one point they bring... Sorry, it's done. Honest mistake. But anyway, at one point they bring in Sansa and try to get her to tell them what happened, because Joffrey's saying one thing and Arya's saying another. So they try to get Sansa to come in, and Sansa claims she doesn't remember what happened. Yeah, you deserve Joffrey, Sansa. Yeah, I said it. You deserve Joffrey. But anyway, and Arya's calling her a liar, and anyway, like I said, Cersei's all bloodlusty. They can't find Nymeria. She wants the wolf dead, and Joffrey wants the wolf dead, and Robert just doesn't want to deal with any of it. He doesn't want to deal with any of it. And he's like, "Oh, just ground her." He doesn't say that, but you get the idea. He's like, "Whatever, this is over. It's kids. They're fighting. Let's move on." But of course, Cersei won't let it go. And she says, "Oh, we have another wolf." Cersei. Anyway, so what ends up happening is that Cersei gets Robert. Not really. Anyway, Cersei gets her way. Cersei and Joffrey get their way because Robert doesn't want to deal with any of this. And she orders Sansa's wolf, Lady, to be killed since they can't find Nymeria. Well, Sansa, maybe you should have told the truth. Just saying. But anyway, and the executioner who we met earlier is supposed to go kill the wolf. And Ned's like, "No, I will do it myself. She deserves better than you." And he goes outside to find Lady, who's chained up outside and just sitting there and behaving, not doing anything wrong. And as he's approaching Lady, he sees the Hound coming back with the dead body of Micah, the butcher's boy. Downwind killed him. Yeah, that's Cersei and Joffrey's idea of justice. Micah didn't do anything. Anything. And Joffrey had the Hound kill him. Welcome to your new job, Ned. Hope you enjoy it. Yeah. So, Ned goes and pets Lady, and he looks upset, obviously, that this is his king, and his new role is to listen to these people and do what they tell him. And it's just, he sees how bad it really is in the kingdom, and how corrupt everything is, and how Robert doesn't give a crap, and will just do whatever Cersei and Joffrey want because he doesn't care. So, Ned kills Lady. We don't see him actually kill Lady. You hear her whimper, and then you hear the knife slice. So Lady's dead. Sansa no longer has her wolf. But right at the moment, Arya doesn't have her wolf either, although at least Nymeria is still alive as far as we know. But Sansa's wolf's dead. Sansa's screwed, basically, because there is a connection between the Starks and their wolves, which we'll see more of later. But anyway, as Ned slices Lady's throat, the camera's not on that. What the camera actually goes to is Bran. And right at the moment when Lady dies, like right before you hear Summer like fussing and whimpering a little, like he knows what's happening to his sister Lady, the other wolf, because they were from the same litter, remember? So Summer's whimpering a little, and right as Lady gets killed, Bran's eyes fly open. He's awake again! Bran, the only one that knows for sure what the Lannisters are really like. Although Ned's getting a pretty good idea right now, I think. So anyway, that's how the show ends. Lady gets killed because of the Lannisters, and Bran is suddenly awake. However, Bran's mom and dad and his two sisters are no longer there. So, who he's gonna tell, if anybody, about what he saw and what led him falling, well, that's anybody's guess at this point. So that's how Episode 2, The Kingsroad, ends. The show likes killing people and animals in the last moment, don't they? So, yeah, don't get too comfortable with anybody. There seems to be a lot of people that are dying. Even animals ain't safe. So anyway, picture of Lady. Bye, Lady. R.I.P. Funny side note, the actress who plays Sansa, I think she's great. I mean, Sophie Turner is great. I hate Sansa, but Sophie Turner is a really good actress. But the actress who plays Sansa, she actually adopted the dog that played Lady. That's her actual pet. So I think that's kind of cute. But anyway, so that's how the story, or the second episode, ends. And as you can see, Ned's got himself into a bit of a situation here, dealing with these crazy Lannisters and a king who doesn't care and doesn't stand up for what's right at all. And Ned's all about what's right. And, needless to say, these two have grown apart over the years. Ned and Robert are two completely different characters. And Ned is starting to see that painfully clearly. And, more importantly, Arya is starting to see that pretty clearly. Because you can see when they order Lady to be killed, the look on her face just says it all. Like, I hate every one of you people. I ain't gonna forget. And it's true, Arya does not forget much. You'll see as the show goes on. So anyway, that is episode 2. Hope you enjoyed it. And, hopefully you'll tune in for the next one, too. So, see you next time, and, please comment. I mean, I have the comments set to, approval, because I don't like trolls and don't like spoilers, but I do look at YouTube pretty much every day, so it shouldn't take too long for your comment to be put up there if you decide to make one. Like it, subscribe, tell me if there's anything you think I should change or do differently, or any side topics you might want to see other than just the reviews, just let me know. I want to, do stuff that you guys will like. So, tell me what you think. If there's anything else you'd like to see or like to see me change, let me know. And I guess that's it for now, and see you for the next episode.